Yes, make you vibrate on. EJ Pockets here. It's another buttermilk, another experience you won't soon forget. Tonight, no exception. This one might blow your mind. I've got Eric Dubay talking about the flat earth. He wrote a book called The Flat Earth Conspiracy. We'll talk about it. It's really interesting stuff. So I'm speaking to Eric Dubay. Is that how I pronounce your name?
That's right.
Eric Dubay. And we're on Skype, and you're calling in from Thailand, correct?
That's correct.
Sunny Thailand, right?
It's moonlit at the moment, but yeah, it's usually quite sunny.
24-hour time. And thanks for agreeing to come on the program and talk about the flat earth.
Thanks for having me.
And I don't know where to start with this issue, but I guess when I first heard about the flat earth, I laughed. I thought it was the funniest thing. And then recently I've been going through this thing where I kind of look at things again and re-examine. And I think a friend of mine pointed me to some of your videos, and I was very skeptical at first. And then I started to be like, there may be something here. But to people out there who are just like me going, this is crazy. What I hear most is this is, anti-science, or this is, loony bin stuff. First, how'd you arrive at this idea?
Well, I never fully bought the spinning ball Earth with gravity holding us on the bottom idea that they were telling us at school. So I always had a little kind of inkling towards this not being the way they told us, but I just go along to get along through schooling. And then in my 20s I came across geocentricity, the idea that the Earth is the center of the solar system, or the Earth is the center of the universe, instead of the sun, the heliocentric theory that they teach in school. And that was making quite a bit of sense. And then from there I started reading some old flat Earth books. Most of them, the book I wrote, The Flat Earth Conspiracy, it's the first flat Earth book that's been written in over 40 years. Before that, most of them were in the 1800s and before, so I had to go through a lot of old literature. And having gone through quite a few old flat Earth books, it really started to dawn on me that this was quite a conspiracy, and legit. So yeah, it took me years of going back and forth whether is this for real? Could this possibly be? At first you think that you've got so much proof and evidence that of course we're living on a spinning ball, and NASA's been to outer space, and there's all these other ball planets and everything. The whole thing seems so solid at first, but when you start looking into the evidence for the flat Earth and the refutations for the supposed proofs of a ball Earth, like the Eratosthenes experiment and the Foucault's pendulum and the Coriolis effect and all these other things that they cite, or the ships disappearing below the horizon, or circumnavigation, they've got plenty of different proofs, but when you look into it more and more, and if you got the ball Earth in your right hand and the flat Earth in your left hand, the more you look into the evidence for and against, the more your flat Earth hand just starts being weighed down, and the ball Earth hand starts being lifted up, and you see that there really is no evidence whatsoever that we're living on a spinning ball. And so this is not at all anti-science, the flat, motionless Earth. It's very pro-science, but what we've been taught is a pseudo-science. And so that's why people who've been indoctrinated into the pseudo spinning ball Earth science look at this new flat Earth perspective as being totally anti-science, as you said. But the more you look into it, you'll see that this is very scientific. Experiments have been done and repeated, calculations have been made, and you can make them yourself to prove that the Earth doesn't have the curvature that they say it does.
Okay, well, prove it to me. Say I'm a skeptic. And prove it to the people who may be listening to this broadcast that we live on a flat Earth.
Sure. So one of the main ways to prove that you're living on a flat Earth is to calculate the curvature. So if we are living on a ball, they say it's 25,000 miles in circumference, and using spherical trigonometry, it goes out to there being 8 inches per mile, varying inversely with the square of the mile, which means that after the first mile, there's an 8-inch drop. After the second mile, 2 squared, 4 times 8 is 32, so it's 32 inches. After the next mile, 3 miles, 3 times 3, 9 times 8, 72 inches. So this is the kind of dip that you get on a sphere. 25,000 miles in circumference. You can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure this out. NASA agrees with this number anyway, so it's not a debated number that it goes down this way. What is debated is whether it actually does so. So there's been experiments done using flags, using laser leveling, using sextants and theodolites and different instruments to check over a series of miles whether this curvature is actually happening or not. And time again, when you take these measurements, there's no curvature whatsoever, not even a little bit of curve. So even if they got the circumference of the ball Earth off by, say, 4 times, if it was 100,000 miles around instead of 25,000, you'd still have some measurable, calculable curvature, which just isn't there when you take these measurements. And anyone can do them. You just need a flat area long enough. They've done measurements over 6 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, and then with things like lighthouses, you can see the light from lighthouses at sea, depending on where you are and how high the light is, for over 100 miles, much further than you could on a ball Earth, even with refraction. It would be impossible to see them. Canals, railroads, tunnels are all built with no account made for the curvature, supposed curvature of the Earth as well. The horizon is always flat. No matter how high you go up, the horizon remains flat and rises to the eye of the observer. So you can see amateur balloon footage on the internet up over 20 miles high. The horizon remains flat, and it rises to the eye of the camera the whole way up. Now, if the horizon was really the curvature of the ball Earth, then as you rose up in a hot air balloon, say, you'd have to look down, further and further, looking down, to see the ball Earth, to see the horizon. But what actually happens is the horizon rises right up with you the entire way up. So as high as an independent rocket or balloon gets, the horizon rises all the way to your eye level and is flat all around. But when NASA shows us pictures, they claim to be much higher, and then there's curvature and the ball photos, but those are all CGI, or some of them are done through a round window, the earlier ones. But they're all fake images. There is no actual image of a ball Earth. If you Google it, you'll see that they're all composites, CGI, or literally taken through a round window in low Earth orbit. That's how they faked the first ones.
Eric, how do you know that they're composite? How do you know that they're not real photos?
Well, I actually admit that they're composite. Composite's their word, not mine, for their fake pictures. They say that there's satellites out there taking satellite images, and these satellite images, they receive ribbons of imagery, they call them, and then they have to extrapolate the ribbons of imagery out in Photoshop, and they admit it. So they can't apparently just take a photo or take some video out there from their satellites. The technology they use, they claim, is can only make a picture for us if they composite it and edit it in Photoshop. So
really?
They've got
Wow.
in one of my videos I've got a NASA guy talking about it, just admitting it straight out. He's like, yeah, well, they are Photoshopped, but they have to be.
Simmons' job is...
It's primarily taking data and making pictures out of it.
That's what this is. A composite of data sets from several different instruments translated into a picture.
In between each orbit.
So some of those are painted on.
It is Photoshopped, but it's has to be.
Then,
Yeah, of course it has to be.
And then he tries to explain this ribbons of imagery nonsense about how they can't just take a photo. They have to do this, whatever, satellite imaging nonsense. It's just a way that they can get around the fact that there should be, if there really are 20, 30,000 satellites out there, as they say there are, there should be thousands and thousands of different images of the Earth. But Google images of the Earth for fun, and you'll see that there's very, very few. There was one, really, the Apollo 17 image, the one that you see in every science book, the one you see in every article ever written, ever. Sometimes they flip it upside down, or they change the tint to it sometimes, but you can see the circle cloud formations and the outline of Africa and everything. It's always the same. There's very few different images, and if you look at them with a keen eye, you can see that it's not an image. It's a painting. It's a CGI. It's not an actual photograph.
Wow, so this has some ramifications, and talking about looking down at the Earth, and are you saying that there are no satellites up there?
No, there's no satellites up there either. The satellites were first invented by Arthur C. Clarke, a science fiction writing Freemason, and they supposedly became science fact shortly thereafter. But all the things that are supposedly done via satellite are able to be done via ground-based technologies. So there's no reason to assume that satellites exist, just based on, say, it's satellite TV or GPS or whatnot. These things are all done via ground-based towers, and they don't require satellites. And there's a few proofs that the satellites don't exist, as they supposedly exist in the thermosphere, where it's much too hot for the materials that the satellites are supposedly made of to exist. The images supposedly coming from satellites are all fake, so that's suspect, as well as the fact that there just is no zero-G vacuum of space, as they claim. They claim that, if you go up high enough, the gravity gets less and less, and the air gets less and less dense, to the point that you just pop out of the atmosphere of the Earth and into the absolute vacuum of space, which is zero G. But this doesn't exist. There is no point where you...
So try to explain the zero G again.
Okay. So they say that space is the vacuum, but space is connected to the atmosphere of the 1 septillion planets that they've built into, not separate in any way from the vacuum of space. How can there be a vacuum of space, as a vacuum cannot be connected to a non-vacuum and maintain itself as a vacuum? It has to be a self-contained unit. So there can't be a vacuum of space at all, and they can't move through a vacuum of space. If there really was, using thrusters on a rocket wouldn't thrust you to the moon. It would just spin your space vehicle uncontrollably like a gyroscope in 360-degree motion. You'd never go anywhere. The zero-G illusion, also, that you see astronauts, they look like they're floating or flying in space. It's achieved through 3 different ways. One way is through zero-G planes. They're just Boeing 737s specially outfitted to do these parabolic maneuvers, where they do a parabolic, and then you have a zero-G like free fall state where it seems like you're floating for about a minute at a time. You can keep this going. The second way, when they're like at the fake International Space Station fixing things outside of it, this is done in a pool, in a dark pool. They're actually underwater, and you can see bubbles rising out of the pool, proving that they're in a pool in many of their spacewalks. So the outside space shots are done in the pool. The inside, most of the inside shots are done in zero-G planes, and then some of the longer inside shots are done with a green screen and harnesses, so they just kind of float on a harness in front of a green screen. And with these 3 methods, they're able to produce the zero-G effect that everybody thinks is them floating around in space. But in reality, anything that goes up comes right back down. There is no point where you can just go up, 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 and then, I'm floating now, and I get to float through infinite space now forever. That's the illusion. That doesn't happen. You will always come back to the Earth. You'll always fall right back down.
No matter how high you go up?
As high as any non-NASA source has gone, with a rocket or with a balloon, yeah, it always comes right back down after about 20-mile mark or so.
Wow. Well, let's get back to the Earth, shall we? And then we can go back to the space stuff, because it's almost a separate little conspiracy.
Sure.
So, if the Earth is flat, can we fall off of it? Are those legends true?
Well, it's still a mystery to me anyway, whether there's an edge, a barrier, like a dome at some point, or if it's an infinite plane. So the flat Earth model is, well, the ball Earth model has Antarctica on the bottom of the ball. So no matter where you are on the Earth, if you head south, eventually you'll end up at Antarctica. Now that's true on both models, because in the flat Earth model, Antarctica is surrounding us 360 degrees, enclosing all the oceans, holding them in. And it's a wall. The Antarctica is literally a wall, and then an ice plateau beyond it, which encloses the oceans. And early explorers tried to find an inlet through the ice wall, like James Clark and Captain Cook, and I have them in my book, I can't remember all their names, but they went around the Antarctic ice wall, and it took them years, 3 or 4 years, to go all the way around Antarctica, traveling many, many more miles than Antarctica supposedly is on the ball Earth model. But they didn't climb on top of the ice. That only recently have expeditions gone on top of the ice, and there's a big cover-up there as well we can talk about. So as far as public information, we don't know how far along the Antarctic ice you can go, whether you'd be going for a while and then you'd get to an edge and, like you said, fall off into space, or whether there's a barrier or a dome of some sort, as many cultures believed, or whether it's an infinite plane and it's just snow, ice, wind, and darkness forever. That's still a mystery at this point.
Is the whole flat Earth idea, is that a new idea? How long has this been around?
No, the flat Earth was worldwide for thousands of years before this spinning ball Earth came around. The first person to think of the spinning ball Earth was also the first Freemason, Pythagoras of Samos. Most Freemasons trace their ancestry, if you will, back to Pythagoras as being the first Freemason. And that was 2,500 years ago. But his idea didn't catch on at all until about 500 years ago, when Copernicus, another Freemason and Jesuit, wrote his book promoting this spinning ball Earth and concept. And then Kepler and Newton and Galileo, they took it from there, and now NASA and RASA and all the other space agencies, they're experts like Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're continuing this heliocentric spinning ball Earth gravity myth that's been going on for 500 years, and they keep adding on to it now. Now you've got a Big Bang and evolution and aliens and 1 septillion other ball planets. Now they're going to come out and say they've found life on other planets soon. They've already given us fake pictures from Mars claiming that there's a pyramid and Sphinx on Mars, trying to cement this alien progenitor propaganda into us.
So are you saying there are no aliens?
Not in the sense of extraterrestrials, since there are no extraterrestrial places. Earth is the only material plane. It's a plane, not a planet. And the planets are just stars. That what we call planets today were known for thousands of years as the wandering stars. They differ from the fixed stars in their relative motions only. All the fixed stars in the constellations, they're fixed together in their patterns as they revolve around the heavens. But the planets, as they're called now, used to be known as wandering stars, because they seem to wander their own unique paths. they just spiral around the sun, and they have kind of a spirograph orbit. You can see in one of my videos called The Ancient Flat Earth Beliefs, a model of it to give you an idea. But with the naked eye or with the telescope, you can see for yourself that these so-called planets are just stars. They're just lights in the night sky. They claim that the planets are physical terra firma that you can land on and potentially live on. And they also claim that the stars are distant suns in galaxies trillions of light years away. Now, these light years are things that they've come up with to try and convince you that those lights in the sky aren't as close as they actually are. They want you to think that the nearest star is actually 25 trillion miles away, and the reason they have to say this is because you can prove for yourself in your backyard with a telescope that the Earth is motionless. If we're really spinning around the sun 200 million miles every 6 months, we would be on the other side of the sun, right? So you can, by looking at the parallax change in the stars, see whether that's true. And there's not an inch in parallax change in any of the stars after 6 months of supposed orbital motion around the sun. So if that's the case, it's proof that we haven't moved. And the Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe, back in the day, 400 years ago, he was arguing the geocentric model over this new heliocentric model, using this as a proof. And so to get through this, to try and refute this, they said, oh, no, well, the reason is that even after this supposed 200 million miles of orbit around the sun, that you can't see any change in the distance to the other stars, is because the other stars are so far away. The closest one is 25 trillion miles away, so you wouldn't see an inch of difference, would you? Aha. And so they use a lot of reverse engineered damage control kind of explanations like this. Another one is the 23.5 degree tilt that supposedly the ball Earth has, and then it wobbles back and forth to cause the season. Mm-hmm. The reason they originally had that tilt was because you can see Polaris, the pole star, all the way from 23.5 degrees south latitude, which is you'd have to be seeing through the ball to be able to see that in their model. So they said, oh no, well, let's tilt it back on its vertical axis, and that's why you can see it there. So they've got a lot of explanations like this that people parrot till today. They don't even know why they have these explanations. They're to try and excuse away legit refutations that geocentric flat earthers have made throughout the centuries to this fake heliocentric model that's being taught in schools and the mainstream media.
Well, wow, this goes deeper than... You're blowing me away. Why all this deception?
There's a bunch of reasons. I mean, one reason is the profit motive. NASA makes hundreds of billions of dollars giving us these fake CGI images of their supposed missions all over the place. So they're pocketing, 98% of that money, and they use the other 2% to hire graphic artists like Matthew Boylan, who's come out and exposed the flat Earth. He's an ex-NASA person. And they do send rockets up, but you'll see the rockets, they all come right back down. None of the rockets go straight up. They start the parabola on their way back, and the ones they claim are successful are the ones that go out of your eyesight before they really start to fall back down to Earth. And they say that, well, it's curving around the ball and it will reach escape velocity and leave the Earth's atmosphere out of your view, when in reality the rockets just fall back into the ocean. That's why they're all the NASA and RASA and everything else set up right next to the oceans, so that the rockets can fall there and nobody can see what's going on. So the profit margin's there. But beyond that, like I said, the deception is just getting bigger and bigger. So it started out with the spinning ball, but now we've got 1 septillion ball planets. And then in the 1850s, we got dinosaurs. Those came into, dinosaurs never existed before the 1850s. That's when the first fossil was supposedly found, just the same time when Darwin was coming up with his monkey evolution theory. So, and then we shortly after that came up with the Big Bang. So what we've got now is a godless Big Bang, a nothing for no reason in no time exploded and created everything. And then a bit of the everything turned into self-replicating bits, and life spontaneously created, and order and intelligence and consciousness all came into existence. So we've got this cosmology that comes from nothing. It's atheistic, it's nihilistic. It makes it as though humanity and Earth and everything here is just a cosmic accident. It's purposeless, it's meaningless. That's why this kind of atheistic materialism is rampant nowadays, because this kind of metaphysics is what we're being taught. So if we're just in the corner of some galaxy and the fingertip under the dust of the fingertip of the universe, then we don't mean anything. So what it does is it spiritually crushes humanity, so that we just think that me is all that's important, because this life is meaningless, God doesn't exist, we're just a bunch of primordial soup that turned into monkeys, and then monkeys turned into humans. They got us believing just a bunch of nonsense. The overall reason, if you're a psychopath, like the people who do control this world all are, then what you want, your ultimate goal is world domination. The best way to achieve world domination is through propaganda and mind control. So the way to mind control someone, if you've got them in a cage since birth, you tell them that the cage is the only thing there is. And that's what we're told, basically. We're told that the only thing that is the amount of land that we tell you there is, and everywhere else you can't go. You can't go to the North Pole, and you can't go to the Antarctic without government approval and licensing. They have little tours where you can go and take little photo ops, but you can't go yourself and explore what's actually at the North Pole and what's actually out along the Antarctic ice. How far does it go? Could we prove that the Earth is a ball? Matt Boylan, the ex-NASA guy I was telling you about, he's got a challenge going. He wants to go to Antarctica. He'll enter from any point, and with his team, ropes and spikes, go straight southwards along the Antarctic ice and see, will he come up on the other side of the ball? Or will he hit a barrier or an edge? Or is it an infinite plane? But they won't let him or anyone else do that. Jarl Andahoy is another independent sailor I'm not sure if what his views on the shape of the Earth are, but he really wants to go to the North Pole and to the Antarctic, and he doesn't want to have government approval or go with their teams. He just wants to do it. They're supposedly no man's land, so why can't we go to no man's land and explore for ourselves? They've fined him and put him in jail for even trying to do so. Rodney Clough and his team, he tried to go to the North Pole, and they met twice Russian ships saying that they'd blow them out of the water if they continued. They were forced to turn around. So we're not allowed to take independent trips to the North Pole or to the Antarctic ice to confirm these kind of things for ourselves. We're kept in the middle of area of Earth all the time, and told that that's all there is. But if the Earth really is flat and Antarctica is all around us, then there's a lot more real estate than they claim. There's a lot more Earth than is shown on our maps. And the maps that we're shown are absolutely wrong. We can get into that as well. There's way more land than they are shown, and way less land. Greenland, if you look at the typical Mercator projections, almost as big as Africa. But Africa is actually about 18 times larger. So the projections we're shown are not quite the way things are.
So, now, let me get this straight. Because this is somewhat of an eye-opener for me and for other people listening to this. You're saying that the Earth does not revolve around the Sun, that the Sun revolves around the Earth. You're saying that the Earth does not spin on its own axis.
No.
So where do we get night and day?
So the Sun and the Moon revolve over and around the flat Earth. The Sun's path starts on June 21st on the summer solstice at the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees north latitude. So if we're looking at a flat model here, the North Pole is the middle point. Imagine a bullseye or a target. The North Pole is the middle point, and then you've got a disc shape all the way around, and that's the Antarctic ice. As I said, I don't know how far the Antarctic ice goes, whether there's a dome at some point, as many cultures believe, whether there's an edge, whatever. But what we do know is that the North Pole is the center point, the Antarctic ice rim is around it, the equator is halfway, and so the sun starts at 23.5 degrees north latitude in the summer solstice, and it makes a circle around the flat Earth in a 24-hour period. So you're imagining the sun going around in a circle. The circle gets bigger and bigger and faster every day until the winter solstice. At the autumnal equinox, 3 months later, it will pass the equator. And then another 3 months is when it's at the winter solstice, and then it will be at 23.5 degrees south latitude, which is the Tropic of Capricorn. And then for the next 6 months, it will slow down slowly day by day and make smaller and smaller circles as it passes the equator again on the vernal equinox 3 months later, smaller and smaller, slower and slower, all the way back to the Tropic of Cancer at 23.5 degrees north latitude. And so the sun makes this kind of cycle. The moon makes the same cycle following it, and but it doesn't change its speed. So generally twice per year, the moon and the sun overtake one another, and that's when the eclipse happens. As you can see, the moon and the sun appear to be, and are, the exact same size. In the ball Earth model, they claim that the sun is actually very big and very far away. It's 400 times bigger than the moon and 400 times farther away, and that's why, from our perspective, it just seems like they're the same size. That's their answer. In reality, you can measure with sextants and plane trigonometry, and you'll see that the moon and the sun are 32 miles in diameter, about 3,000 miles off the surface of the Earth. Flat Earthers for centuries have made the same calculations, whereas ball Earthers, these heliocentrists, their calculations change on their whims. For instance, Copernicus, he said that the sun was 3 million miles away in his day, 500 years ago. Kepler, about 100 years later, said it was 12 million miles away. Newton was quoted saying, "It matters not whether it's 26 or 54 million miles away, science will find the answer." And since then it's gotten bigger and bigger, and now the average is about 93 million miles away. But I mean, I have footage on my YouTube channel, for instance. Type in no curvature on the flat Earth, and you'll see an amateur balloon footage. The sun is above the clouds, and you can see a hot spot right beneath the sun on the top of the clouds as it's passing, and it's just underneath the sun, and the hot spot's not to be seen anywhere else, which proves that the sun is not 93 million miles away. It's right over that little patch of clouds, as you can see in the video. You can also see in many pictures, and you can see for yourself in sunsets, that the rays of the sun are coming in at a different angle. They're not all coming in at the same angle. If they were 93 million miles away, then all the rays of light would be coming in at the same straight line. But in reality, they come in at an angle because they're not very far away.
So, wow.
So let me finish the explanation of the sun and the moon's movement. So the moon is like following the sun, and this is where we get the fables of the hedgehog and the hare, or nowadays it's called the tortoise and the hare, usually updated version. There's a bunch of versions of it, but it's always the same idea, where there's two animals, they're in a race, one of them's real cocky, and he goes really fast, and then he gets tired or gets lazy or takes a nap or something, and eventually the other one, which was the slow but steady, overtakes him and wins the race. This is what the sun and the moon do every year in their journey over and around the flat Earth. As I said, the sun does the race, and it starts out going faster and faster, and so it overtakes the moon, and that's when the first eclipse happens. And then it's it's advanced its journey to the winter solstice. It gets there before the moon. Moon's slow but steady, poking along. And then eventually it's like the sun, or the hair or whatever it's being symbolized by, tires out and it starts to slow down. But the moon just keeps on going the same steady pace, and then the moon overtakes the sun again later on in the year during the second eclipse. And eventually the moon wins the race and makes it back to the tropic before the sun does. So these fables are talking about the sun and the moon as well, their motions over and around the flat earth.
Oh boy. What's people's reaction to this kind of stuff when you talk to others about it?
It really varies, of course, based on the person. Some people are very open-minded and discerning, and they can take in new information without having any sort of defense mechanism, denial, ridicule, apathy, or other sort of things get in their way. But then other people, for various reasons, such as the few I just mentioned, some people are too apathetic to care, some people think it's too ridiculous to consider, some people have a kind of an ego defense where they don't want to be ridiculed, so you don't even want to consider that it might be the case, because then you'd have to be the nut job telling everybody that you think the earth is flat and motionless. So it's easier to just go along and to get along, and as long as 99.9% of the people are agreeing that we're living on a spinning ball, then it's easier to just ridicule the people that say otherwise, or ignore the people that say otherwise, and not really look into it too deeply yourself.
That's sort of how things work in the society. People don't look into anything. They just take the school system at face value, that everything they tell them is true, and they take everything that the government tells them is true, especially NASA. NASA has some sort of hold, and scientists as well, some kind of hold on people where they think that, well, the guy's wearing a lab coat and whatever he says is correct. Even though there's lots of history in science of scientists bashing new theories that come along, and faking evidence and all kinds of stuff, but that conveniently gets left out of the conversation. It's like we have no memory of anything.
Yeah, the winners write the history, so right. It's difficult to see what's been erased.
Now, are you saying that, and I don't know if you know this answer, are we the only so-called intelligent life? And that's a funny thing to say right now, but out there, I mean, are there other universes? Are there other galaxies?
The Hindu cosmology says that there's an infinite number of these flat Earth universes. They say that we're inside of a sphere, so that the universe is a sphere, actually, not the Earth. So there's like a dome over us, and we're on the flat middle part, like a snow globe. If you could imagine a snow globe, we're on the flat level surface on the middle of the snow globe, and the dome is literally made of glass. They call it the firmament in the Bible. But potentially there could be an infinite number of snow globe Earth universes or like this, or like I said, perhaps the flat Earth itself is infinite. It's an infinite flat plane, and there could even feasibly, say you go along the Antarctic ice for thousands of miles, and then suddenly you come to another flat Earth system, or another, whatever you want to call it, another plane, and there's another sun and a moon and a whole other area. This is completely speculation on my part. I'm just saying that at this point, what is beyond the Antarctic ice is a mystery to the public and to me, and to anybody that hasn't gone there. No flight has even gone over it. Nobody has ever circumnavigated the Earth from north to south, so no flights go over the South Pole. They say it's too cold. So we've circumnavigated east to west, but you can circumnavigate around a flat disk east to west, no problem. So sailors and pilots that do that, you can do that on a flat Earth just as well as you can on a ball Earth. But what you can't do is go from the North Pole southwards, keep going southwards and end up back at the North Pole. Nobody's ever tried that, and I'd love to see some pilot with a Ustream account just go for it. See what happens.
Yeah. So let's get back to the space part, because that also interests me. Where you talk about you believe the space station is not really there. That I guess by extension that we haven't gone into space at all. That we haven't gone to the moon. That we haven't sent these probes out to Jupiter or all these planets, Galileo or whatever. What's your evidence to say that we haven't gotten out of the atmosphere into space?
Sure. Yeah, we haven't been to the moon. You can't even go to the moon, as it's not a physical place that you could land on. You can actually see through it. You can see stars through it even. During a waxing and waning cycle, you can kind of still make out the outline of the moon there. But if there's a star or a planet, a wandering star that's near its orbit, you can see with the naked eye the star breach the darkened area of the moon during a waxing and waning cycle, showing that it's not a densely solid physical terra firma, place like they claim it is, like they show us in the videos, but it's just a light that you can see through. So the sun and the moon and the stars and the planets, they're just lights in the night sky. They're not places that you could step foot on. And the pictures, say, from the moon, they're all demonstrably done in a studio. There's a lot of you can go on my site and type in Apollo moon landing hoax. You'll see a bunch of evidence where you can see the astronauts on wires. If you speed up the footage 2 times, you can see that they're actually in Earth gravity. They've just changed the footage, changed the speed, so it seems like they're in, moon gravity or whatever. Oh yeah, I could go on and on. The flag waving, no stars in the background. Individual photographic evidence, individual photos. You can see spotlights reflecting in their visors. Anybody that hasn't figured out the Apollo moon landing hoax, check out A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Is one great documentary, as well as Astronauts Gone Wild. It's another good one. And check out Jack White's research. He's gone through all the photographic evidence and shown how it's clearly done on Earth. Yep, can you hear me?
Now I can, but that whole
okay.
part about these other countries are having their own space programs, but they're faking it worse than the U.S.
Yes, some of the new Chinese moon footage, as well as the Chinese ISS, are just terrible. I recommend anyone check it out. Try to verify the authenticity of any of this NASA stuff. Just make it a hobby. Try to look into the images of the Earth. Look into the International Space Station images. You'll see for yourself that you've been had.
So, what is NASA doing with all this money that they're getting?
Good question. No, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with all the money.
I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars over how many years?
Right, yeah. 50, 60 years now.
So what about these, you mentioned that you don't think they're extraterrestrials. What about all these UFO sightings, and what about all these artifacts that supposedly we have? Are those fake?
I think I've seen a bunch of images in the government unidentified flying crafts. So the government's got, 30 years ago, they showed us the stealth bomber, and we're supposed to think that that's the most modern flying equipment they've got. I'm sure there's plenty of government classified operations up there. So they've definitely got different types of craft that can be I've seen one that's a plane, and then they just got a circular disc around it, so it looks like from the bottom that it's a UFO, but it flies just like a plane. As well as the alien UFO phenomenon is known throughout, the Peruvian Amazon and stuff, the ayahuasqueros and the shamans there, they take ayahuasca, DMT, peyote, and different entheogens, psychedelics, and then they paint and tell stories of seeing flying crafts, spirit, and glad behave like the Yuva reptilian Nordics and jinns and whatever you call them, the greys, all these things that are in ufology were in medieval demonology and are still in current tribal spiritual hierarchies. They talk about these things as well. So these entities very well may be non-physical, on that is definitely demons. There's definitely non-physical consciousness that exists. Call those what you want: sprites, fairies, elves. They've got different names for them throughout history. They've called these things different things.
We're talking to Eric Dubay about the flat Earth. And no, it's not a joke. And there's actually is a Flat Earth Society. I looked it up. Are you a member of the Flat Earth Society, Eric?
So that is a joke.
That's a joke?
Actually, just restarted. Well, there's a Flat Earth Society that's been in existence since 1970, and that really is a joke. It's a controlled opposition organization that was created by a Freemason to make it seem they mix truth with lies and satire, so that anybody that approaches the flat Earth subject is met with some false flat Earth arguments and a bunch of jokes, basically. So they're kind of left with the idea that the whole thing is a joke. However, there was another Flat Earth Society called the International Flat Earth Research Society that was started in 1956 by Samuel Shenton, and this was a legitimate Flat Earth Research Society. And I just restarted it a couple weeks ago with Forum Online. That's the new International Flat Earth Research Society, which stands in opposition to the Flat Earth Society known, which, as I said, they mix in a bunch of false Flat Earth arguments so that anybody who is interested in checking out this idea of a Flat Earth will instantly come upon the Flat Earth Society's material, and they'll read some of the things and instantly be turned off. For instance, they claim that gravity exists, but the flat Earth disk is constantly rising upwards, accelerating at 9.8 meters per second, and they claim that is the reason for the effect of gravity. So you're not falling the Earth, the Earth rises up and hits you, this kind of idea. Of course, this is ridiculous. You can prove that that's not the case, because if the Earth was constantly rising, as they say in the Flat Earth Society, helicopters, airplanes, balloons, whatever, would be, the Earth would crash into them constantly. But this is a clearly false argument to make flat Earth research look silly, because if the Earth was constantly rising up like that, then it would crash into planes and helicopters and everything. So it's easily proven incorrect, and they purposely use these easily proven incorrect arguments so that genuine people looking into the flat Earth will be deterred from looking any further, because it seems like such nonsense when you read these nonsense arguments, like the Earth constantly rising to account for gravity.
So you were saying to me that there is no gravity.
Right. In reality, all legitimate flat Earth researchers are aware of the fact that there is no such thing as gravity, so it doesn't need to be accounted for. The idea of gravity, Sir Isaac Newton, a knighted Freemason, came up with this idea. The fact that objects which are denser than the medium surrounding them sink, and objects which are less dense than the medium surrounding them rise. This is a natural property of physics that's long been known for hundreds of years before Isaac Newton. It wasn't called gravity. It's just density. It's just weight. It's just how things are. So if you've got a rock and you let it go, it's going to fall to the ground because the rock is denser than the air around it. If you fill a balloon with helium, the helium is less dense than the nitrogen and oxygen and other elements in the air around it, so it rises up. If you fill a balloon with hydrogen, which is even lighter than the helium, it's going to rise up even faster. If it's a liquid solution, it's the same thing. So it doesn't matter whether it's gaseous, liquid, or otherwise. All that matters is the density of the medium and the object in it, and it will sink or rise based on that. Gravity, this is an idea that Newton came up with to explain why people, buildings, and the oceans don't fall off the underside of a spinning ball Earth, right? If we're on a ball, and say people in Australia, they'd be standing upside down, inverted. What is holding them on? Well, he says gravity, and gravity is this magnetic-like force which pulls everything towards the center of the ball Earth. This is provably incorrect in many different ways. For instance, if there really was some sort of magical magnetism holding your feet to the ground so that you didn't fall off the ball Earth, then every step you took should be like you were wearing magnet boots, and you'd have to lift your one foot off, and thunk, it would thump right down to the earth again, and it'd have to be like that. And if you ever were able to overcome the gravity of the earth enough to jump both feet up at the same time, well, you should continue off into space, because if you've jumped, say,
So you said gravity is like, if that is true, then every time you took a step, it would be like having those, it would be, every step would be really hard because you'd have to pick it up and your leg and drop it down again and pick it up and drop it down. I guess continue on with that thought if you can.
Sure. And so if you were able to jump both feet at the same time, you went 2 feet up, the gravity would be slightly less there. So how would it kick into gear and bring you back? You might as well just continue right off into space. They also say the gravity of the Earth holds the moon in its orbit. This doesn't make any sense, because they say that gravity keeps us stuck to the Earth, but it keeps the moon and other things in the solar system supposedly orbiting other things. So gravity has two properties. When they want it to, it causes some things to orbit in circles or ellipses around other things, and when they want it to, it causes things to stick to things. Why doesn't the moon just become sucked into the Earth? Why does it maintain an orbit? If gravity is what keeps it into the orbit, why doesn't it get sucked into the Earth like we do? Or if we jump up, why don't we start orbiting around the Earth like the moon supposedly does? Why don't we do that? It doesn't make any sense that one would do one and the other would do the other. Nor does it make any sense that, say, the moon's gravity causes the tides on Earth, as they tell us. If the Earth's gravity is 8 times, or however many times they say it is, more so than the moon, then how could the moon's gravity, the lesser gravity, overcome the Earth's stronger gravity at the surface level on Earth and pull the tides towards it? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. That the gravity of the lesser gravity of the moon can affect the Earth's tides when the Earth is supposedly causing the moon to stay in orbit. See, what it is that gravity is their catch-all thing for everything. The reason that they know the distance to the stars is gravity. They can weigh the Earth and weigh all the other planets because of gravity. They've got all these calculations and all these, mathematical formulas they'll show you all day long, showing you how they came up with the weight of the Earth and all this nonsense. And it's all based on gravity. Big Bang is based on gravity. The way that the primordial soup started spinning around and creating supernovas and planets and whatever, all that crap, they say that's because of gravity. Everything's because of gravity. Gravity is why planets formed and life came onto the planets. It's their catch-all reason for everything they can't explain. It's gravity.
So you mentioned under the Earth as well. Now, is there a molten core in the center of the Earth?
Well, that's what they claim. They show us models in school in our textbooks that show a ball Earth, and it says you got the crust at the top, and then you've got an outer mantle and an inner mantle and an outer core and an inner core, and they've got these nice little diagrams that everybody has to memorize and whatnot. But in reality, the Russian Kola Ultra Deep is a project that was drilling as deep into the Earth as they could, and they spent decades drilling down into the Earth, and they only made it 12 kilometers down, 8 miles down. So we don't even know what's beneath the crust. We've never gotten beneath the crust. The mantle and the core, and they say there's a liquid magnetized core that causes the geomagnetization of the ball Earth, all this stuff, that they have no proof whatsoever. They're just creating it and putting it in textbooks. We've never gotten through the crust before. So we don't know what's under the Earth. We don't even know what's at the depths of the Pacific. There's certain areas we haven't gotten to. So they're lying to us that they know what's under or inside the Earth. We have no idea. It's a mystery what's beyond, beneath, and above the Earth.
I'm just floored by the massive amounts of deception involved in this. I mean, we're talking about scientists that are highly regarded, Isaac Newton, Galileo, Copernicus. We're talking about a fake space station. You're talking about a school system and textbooks that put out a spear ball centered Earth theory. It's a massive deception.
Absolutely, it's the biggest cover-up and conspiracy in history for sure. At least 500 years running, and it's mostly since NASA that so many people have fallen for it. If you read some of the old flat Earth material in the 1800s, there's still a raging debate going about this. The idea of a spinning ball Earth versus a flat motionless Earth. It wasn't a foregone conclusion like it is today. Nowadays you're looked at like absolutely crazy for even considering the idea that the Earth wouldn't be moving or that it would be flat. But just 100 years ago, it was quite commonplace to have this view.
People are under the idea, shall we say, or the delusion that today is the best that we've ever had as far as science and civilization and all this kind of stuff, and that everything else, and that these ancient peoples, were idiots and primitive and didn't know enough about the stars or whatever it is to say anything. And most people that you talk to would say that, well, you must be, a Jesus freak if you believe in the flat Earth, or if you don't believe in evolution, or if you don't believe in the Big Bang, or name the widely held theory. Are you religious?
No, not religious. I consider religions to be prepackaged boxes of belief that people buy wholesale, and I think that life is, we're all subjective interpreters of this big mystery here, and that we should all have our own religion, and nobody should follow anyone else's. Your life should be a journey where you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on here, and you can definitely and should definitely see what other people have written and believed, and what the other religions have to offer. So I studied philosophy in college. I'm really interested in comparative religion and theology, and I definitely believe in intelligent design. I believe that this physical world comes from a non-physical being, so to speak, that everything that is actually happening in the mind of a greater being, kind of like a dream. So like when you're in a dream, you got all these different people and places and situations and everything, and then you wake up and you realize there were no other people or places or situations. There was just you. And I think that's what we're doing here. We're all subjective consciousnesses, but ultimately there's one objective consciousness, which is God or Brahma or void or oneness or infinite consciousness, whatever you want to call it. The one originating thing that existed is like an omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent consciousness, objective, and it separates itself into this dualistic world. You know, we've got sun, moon, day, night, male, female, good, evil, inhale, exhale. We're clearly living in a dualistic world, but we come from a singular place. God is singular, objective. We are in a dualistic physical realm where we are subjective. And I think when you die, a piece of God wakes up and realizes that you are only dreaming. Who you think is Dan and I think is Eric is really just a dream character in God's dream, and we're method acting the dream throughout our lives. And when we wake up, we realize that we're not Dan, we're not Eric, we're God. And this subjective experience of being a human on this plane is just that. It's an experience. It's a play. It's a playground. The Hindu cosmology, the Hindu religion, they talk about Brahma and the Upanishads. He's the objective, omniscient, omnipotent intelligence, consciousness, and he's all that exists, and he's all known to himself. And what do? He says he gets bored, there's nothing to do. And so they say that the creation of the material world becomes an inevitability because God's bored. What do you do as an omnipotent, omniscient being? There's nothing to do but to play make-believe, hide and seek. Create a physical, dualistic world where you hide little packets of yourself in animals and plants and humans and have them all interact with each other. And you go in a cyclical nature of ignorance and wisdom where you forget that you are God, which is where we are now in the Kali Yuga, as they call it, which is like they say there's 4 ages. Like a golden age is when everybody knows that we're of God and from God, and Kali Yuga is now when we think we came from a Big Bang non-God accident thing. You know, that's the base of this whole conspiracy. That we think that we are the most, like you said, the most evolved things in the universe right now with our smartphones and our laptops and everything. This is the pinnacle of human evolution. But for millennia, it was known that we are actually devolved from God. We're not evolved from monkeys, we're devolved from God, in the sense that we are as I was talking about, we're subjective packets of consciousness coming from the one objective consciousness. But we're not non-consciousness evolving out of nothingness into monkeys and, transitioning to humans, the whole thing that they go on about. They've never found a species that has turned into another species. It's never happened. It's called macroevolution. Microevolution, little adaptations within species happen, sure, but a species turning into another species never happened.